Brooks, welcome to Puerto Rico.
Thank you.
It's great to have you.
Thank you for having us down.
Yeah, I'm super excited you guys were able to join us. Looking forward to the festivities this evening and this weekend. And
Absolutely.
So if I understand you've watched some of these episodes, but this is your first time on.
Yeah,
So
correct.
welcome to being on Potomac TV.
Thanks.
So, right before you and I started filming today, I was asking you what were some of your biggest takeaways, and you started to tell me, and I said, no, let's talk about it when we sit down. So what was one of your biggest takeaways?
The biggest takeaway I had, when I first found you guys, I was probably a few years into my business. Started in 2016. I was a solo operator for a couple of years. Started growing, hired a team, and most of the time I was just learning as I go. Knew a lot about bugs, knew a lot about pest control. Didn't know a lot about running a business.
Yeah.
And at that time I didn't have much of a circle around me either. And, did like anyone would do is go to YouTube, start searching. Somehow I stumbled across you guys and I just dove right in. And I probably binged episodes for a week or two. I just started learning a lot about my business that I didn't realize before.
Okay.
We were growing at this time probably about 58% a year, and so buried in work I didn't have time to really look at the details.
Yeah.
And you had made a small remark on one of the early episodes about price, and you said, we've got a company doing such and such per annum, or God forbid, such and such per annum. And I think I was close to the God forbid category, and I was like, man, I need to change. I need to do something.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of us making a lot of moves in the company. Benchmarking, that was another episode that really made a big difference for me, because I was benchmarking against lower tier competition, not against the big guys, and we always considered ourselves a premium provider. So
You guys were a premium provider out in the market, but when you're talking about benchmarking, you were talking about benchmarking price, right?
right.
So you would track the secret shop?
Yes. Actually, I put my wife on the job.
Okay, there you go.
So Brandy started looking around at that, and what she found is most of the companies she called didn't even answer the phone. Never happens with us. And when she did get an answer, it just wasn't very professional. These are the guys I'm benchmarking against. And that was the biggest problem, is we were providing a premium service, paying our team very well, and we weren't charging the price that we needed to be successful in that. So that year, let's see, I think I found you guys maybe in 21, beginning of 22, we wrote out, hated to do this, but we wrote out a 35% price increase on most of our base, just because we were that far behind.
Yep.
And we're very fortunate that most of them stayed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a few of them that left came back because they knew the service that we provided was definitely above par.
What other sort of changes did you make in recent years to the business?
So there was a time when we were trying to figure out who we were, get into crawl space work. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we're just Seinfeld reference.
We're not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
My father's gay.
But not that there's anything wrong with
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we had spread ourselves so thin that we weren't where I wanted to be, and also had a lot of headaches associated with these additional services. So we made a point just to go directly to pest and termite, stick with that, and it worked well for us.
When you talk about benchmarking, pricing, and like secret shopping, it reminds me of a time, I think it was maybe 15 years ago. I was in New Jersey and I was working on a deal, and I was at the house of an owner, a pest control owner. And while I was there for a couple of days. We were at his kitchen table working, and while I was there were in that period of time, there were 3 different pest control companies that actually showed up to his house to provide service. And I was just like, I was thoroughly confused. The guy owned a pest control business, and he was actually in the process of selling it, and he still had pest control operators showing up at his house. I'm like, why do you do that? And he's like, well, I've got 14 pest control providers. I've got 5 or 6 HVAC people. I use 6 or 7 plumbers. And I'm like, the pest control guys show up. You don't have any bugs. Can't they tell that somebody, well, he's like, no, they don't pay attention. He's like, I do that because I want to, you were talking about like, you would call the other ones up. They didn't even answer the phone.
Yeah.
He's like, I always wanted to see what everyone else was doing better than us.
Yeah.
How they dressed, what they said, how they operated. So I do think that's important. I'm glad you made those phone calls to figure that out. I think everyone needs to benchmark that pricing now more than ever.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're sitting here right now because you just did a transaction recently. When did it close?
April 1st.
25 days ago.
Yeah.
How does it
Still
feel?
very new.
How does it feel?
I'm still adjusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still helping with the transition. So day to day, I still have a lot of responsibilities. So I'm not totally out yet, but it's definitely been an adjustment, and I'm enjoying getting some rest.
I get the feeling you're younger than me, so why did you do it?
Yes, I never. When I opened this business, I never intended for it to be something I did for the rest of my life. I started with a pest control company back in '06 and worked my way up into operations there, and left there in 2016 to start this. And with pest control, I saw in the business that I was working at when I first started there, they had 2 trucks on the road. One of the guys mentioned to me, hey, this would be a good opportunity for you. The owner had mentioned, he might sell one day. I was like, well, what's something like this work? I'm right around training to be a technician. And he told me, and I thought, what? Wow. And he was, looking back, he was probably about right for that time frame. And I just thought, hey, that's a fast track to meet some financial goals in a shorter period of time. And I had a number in mind. We hit that number a few years ago of where I wanted to be, and definitely things started shifting in the economy, and I probably missed the mark on the huge, when they were scooping up smaller companies. I missed the mark there, but we just weren't ready yet.
You guys weren't ready. Yeah.
And so we stuck with it, and as things got a little bit slower and slower, I think I'd reached out to you guys maybe in 21 for the first time.
That sounds about right.
Franco gave me a goal to hit and a time frame to hit that, and we did that, and things just started chilling. And I just thought, hey, let's just roll with it. And I learned to just love it again. So we got back in and hustled a couple more years. And earlier this year, Franco reached out with someone that was interested, and it's like, sure, let's talk. And here we are.
You hired on with a pest control company. Did you buy that company?
No. So I stayed with them, became an ops manager, had the nice job and the good salary, and I was comfortable for a while. And I just got the itch to go out on my own. And eventually we just went ahead and did that.
So you started in '06. You worked with them until 16-ish?
Yeah, early 16 is when I left. And
so you had 10 years of experience, and then you said, this is it, I'm going to do this.
yeah, it was an older company. I had a lot of new ideas, and a lot of times we just run into walls. Great. I'm forever in debt to the owner, but it was just different generations. I just wanted to do everything different. And so I felt like if I would have purchased that company, it would have been a long way to get where I wanted to be as far as our image and what we do. And I started fresh.
What was your first year out on your own like? How did you start it?
I started in my hometown, so that helped a lot. Very large family, lots of connections, just feet on the ground. I didn't buy a sandwich without passing out the card and just pretending like I was bigger than I was. Yeah. Hey, I'm the local pest guy. If you guys have any trouble here, give me a call. We'll be happy to help you.
Pretend you're bigger than you are until you get big, and then you pretend you're smaller than you are.
That's
right?
exactly right. But did that for years. I mean, the first year was just me, but I never wanted it to sound that way. So there was several times I'd be processing a payment in a crawl space, pretending like I'm in the office. Oh yeah, I've got you up right here.
We look at the file cabinet here.
Just never wanted to look like the guy with the magnets or anything like that.
Yeah.
And second year, I stopped taking clients because I was just like, oh, I'm full. I don't know what to do, where the next step is. A buddy of mine reached out and was looking for work, and we had worked together before in Pest, and I was like, sure, let's go. Got him in a truck, and it just took off from there.
I see. What was your main form of like advertising and marketing in the first year? Was it literally you walking around handing out cards, or were you doing?
It was literally me working connections, relationships that I've had over several years of just living in the same area. At the time, I wasn't too far out from a divorce, so there was no money, and I just old school, worked it hard, looked at what other people did as far as Facebook posts and stuff, and tried to design my own. Had a little help on that. At the time, Facebook wasn't as heavily marketed as it is now, and neither was Google. So, I mean, within our first year in business, I was able to grab that top spot in Google in our area with really hardly no review. My first review was my son. He was really young at the time, and I wasn't even thinking about Google. And I get an email, I got a review, and it said best pest control ever. And I kind of just laughed. Yeah. And the next day I had a new start, and I always ask, hey, how'd you hear about us? And she's like, well, I just Googled pest control, and you guys were at the top. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And so that really changed my thought process, and being fortunate that the market just wasn't saturated with people in my area after that.
What's it like now compared to how it was when you started this business from a saturation perspective?
Yeah, we're heavily saturated now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are seeing the opportunity in pest control, whether you want to, build something for a few years just to, kind of jumpstart your future, or whether you want to retire. It's a solid career. I've been doing this almost 20 years altogether, and it is just, I've seen it through, multiple financial situations and economies, and it's just good industry.
Now that you're out, what will you do?
That's the big question. I'm getting that a lot. So right now I'm fully focused on helping with the transition. After that, I'm not sure that I'll be out of pest control forever, but I know I'm for sure out for 5 years. So, so I don't know. I've had other friends reach out to me about helping in their businesses, and we may go that route. I'm going to take a little break for a few months once my current gig is up, and just decide that we're selling a house and building a house, and haven't had much time with the family over the last few years as we've grown. And just going to knock out some trips and have a little fun with each other.
Yeah, why not? So you've sold a business to a private equity-backed platform. So Chad and Rob Haney sold their business Lookout to Pertron, and I can't even remember when that deal happened. A good year ago, I think. And that is the business now that your business is connected to. It was an add-on to Lookout, which is Chattanooga. Well, actually, it's Georgia, right? They call it Chattanooga, but I think it's
Georgia, but they do say Chattanooga. They had acquired Ace Exterminating back in April, and so we'll be working under Ace's name eventually. The Ace is the platform in Nashville, so unless they figure out that Pest Solutions is much, much better, I believe eventually we'll be working under Ace. And the guys at Ace have been really great through the transition. Our team and their team have been taking notes and learning from each other. So they've adopted some of the things that they found to be more efficient that we were doing, and same with us.
Have you met Scotty?
I'm Scotty.
The former owner of Ace?
No, I haven't.
No, okay. You're going to meet Mr. Pringles.
Scotty runs.
We call Marvin Mr. Pringles because he
Okay.
looks just like him. You will see him probably this evening. So he was Scotty's right-hand man in that business in Ace. Just fantastic guy.
Mr. Pringles!
So it'll be a good opportunity for you guys to meet. Overall, your people seem to be happy?
No one left. Everyone seems to be happy with the transition so far. I would say, I guess we're 4 weeks in now. So at this stage in the game, I think everything has been very smooth. And I think we've got a bright future ahead of us.
How surprised were your people when you did this?
Floored. I'm not at retirement age.
Yeah, I mean, like, you
Yeah.
don't have any of the life event things like that, like, no one died, you didn't get divorced, like, you're not at
Yeah.
retirement age. So I would imagine they were shocked.
Yeah, I'm not exactly an open book, and we were all having a good time. So it wasn't a fire sale or hey, I've got to get out of this. It was just like, hey, I want to, especially with the current economic condition, I hope it gets better. Everybody's got their own opinions on that, but I just thought it was a good time. I had to unplug myself from looking at it as my company, my baby, and think of it as an asset. It just looked like a good time.
And what was that experience like, looking at it as an asset versus, I know it's really tough for owners because your identity is tied to this in a lot of ways. Like, your team
Everything.
is as close to you as your family.
Everything, especially when you're working in a smaller community. So we're in a suburb of Nashville, and everything is related to our business, our friends, our everything. So as we begin to separate from that, that'll definitely be an adjustment, I'm sure. But I haven't made payroll in a month. So that's one thing off my mind.
Yeah.
As I start having less responsibilities, I start sleeping better, relaxing a little more. I tend to be obsessed with whatever I'm working on, and that's not going to change. But being able to take a break from that, has been nice.
If you think back to how you grew that business and you could do it all over again, are there any things that sometimes the answer might be no, but sometimes guys will say, yeah, there were some things I could have done differently. I wish I would have done differently. Do you have any of those?
Yeah, functionally, I would have probably not offered as many services in the beginning. Just find out what your niche is and stick with it.
Why?
Just because you can be really good at it. And for me, now it depends on what kind of, some people like chaos all the time. But when we rearranged the company to pest and termite, a lot of headaches were just gone. We had these two items. We were really good at it, and there wasn't as many unknowns. I've always been the kind of person when something starts becoming a real hassle, I take a look at what I've got to do to change that.
Okay.
Pricing would have been a big thing. I didn't know who I was in the market. I didn't know how good we were, and had no clue how underpriced I was. When you first start out, you don't have a lot of overhead. Money's money. Hey, as long as there's money in the bank, we're doing good, right?
Right.
And but as you grow and you have a staff and an office and all these other expenses, you're like, okay, things are kind of tightening up. So
Yep.
definitely benchmark against the best. That's the best takeaway I had from listening to the Buzz and Potomac TV. That would have changed everything from the beginning. I think I would have started with an office person right away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't realize how valuable that is. My Brandy and I's daughter started in the office, I think 2 years, 3 years in, and she changed everything. A lot of it was who she was and how good she was at what she did. But she became the face of the company, which took a lot of pressure off of me. Her demeanor and work ethic was able to propel us to where we ended up.
I think a lot of the complication with something like that is like people often don't have the money to put somebody in the office because it's pretty standard to view that as kind of like an idle resource, right? The office person isn't making you money.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, oh.
That's what you think.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in fact, the office person can make you a lot of money.
Oh, yes.
Saves your time. You're able to do a lot more. So you would have gotten an office person right out of the gate.
Definitely. So the first year, like I said, I handled the phones. It wasn't terrible. But there's a lot more technology now, or at least I know about a lot more technology. So the company I came from before, the owner was an old Orkin guy. He had left there in the 70s and purchased this small company. And I didn't know about a lot of things that are out there until I started joining groups and listening to you guys. And I would definitely, software would have been something I would have definitely put more time in and focused on more, just to see the metrics and stuff. So once we got into a good software a few years ago, and I could visibly see everything, I knew where a lot of the problems were, and we were able to target those.
What you said made me think about a lot of guys who they leave Orkin, so they're going to run their business how they learned it out of Orkin, for example.
Yeah.
And then you get these older guys who are not up on technology, and then they hire somebody who's like you, who's younger. You kind of look at it and say, well, this is the way it is, because that's the only experience you've had. How active did you get in state association type stuff? Did you see any value in that at all, like the pest control associations, or no?
There's value in it. I never unplugged myself enough to get into that. So I was really plugged into local business networks and just work in my community. So if you go outside of the county that we're located in, we have customers in about 9 counties. But if you get too far out of the one county where we're located, no one knows who we are.
You're unknown.
But in our little county, we're the guys. And so just working that local area, having a branch that's visible and just saturating that small area with our trucks.
You did the opposite of what many people want to do. They want to be in 10 counties and all over the place and spread themselves thin, but you concentrated your efforts in a small geography.
That's right.
Why did you do that?
Just route density. Once I was understanding of how it works, as a solo operator, again, I mean, gosh, if you hit a half of what you should each day, money's decent. You feel okay, especially after you just left working for someone. But once you start seeing the real potential and efficiency and density, you know which way to go. I did.
How much time did you spend yourself peeling through company numbers and trying to analyze stuff?
Not a lot. Maybe 10% of my time. I mean, if something, we had a year a few years ago that was definitely less profitable to the point that it affected us, that we could feel it. And at that time, we just sat down and looked at all of it. Like, where's the problem? And it was price. Once we fixed that, the metrics stayed where they needed to be most of the time.
When you guys were looking at that, when you were doing your pricing study, what sort of disparity did you see in the market between the low cost guys versus like some of the bigger players? Like if you think about, like, let's talk about like a residential protection plan.
Okay.
In your neck of the woods, it's largely quarterly services. Is that what they're selling? What sort of price range did you see when you guys, or at least when Brandy went out there and did her research?
Most of the prices in our area were somewhere, if you're looking at a quarterly pay per service kind of treatment, most of the people were somewhere between 75 and 125.
Okay.
A lot of that changed after COVID and inflation and stuff like that. But when I started looking at our price, I didn't want us to be associated with the people that were our price.
What was your pricing when you first started looking at this before you raised prices?
We were at 70 a quarter.
Okay.
And then when we started getting some research in and just looking at that, when I'm buying something, if it's too low, I don't want it. It's just like, oh, no,
Something's got to be wrong with it.
My wife had to stay at a hotel recently. I think this was last year, and I wasn't involved in any of it. And she told me the day before she was leaving how much it was per night. And I was like, that's not good. Because with the price what you're going to get, and once I realized that the guys in my price range weren't quality, I didn't want to be associated with that anymore. I wanted to be considered premium. I didn't want to be associated with low cost, cheap service. Want to definitely be competitive.
And you also wanted to make money.
You want to provide a decent lifestyle for yourself and your teammates and take care of everybody too. You don't want to be taking shortcuts out there in the field either. So
Your benchmarking price, did you spend any time benchmarking service to understand what, I mean, you talked about you guys being a premium provider. I know you made phone calls. People didn't even answer the phone. Okay, so that's a non-starter.
Right.
They're garbage. But did you spend any time looking at like what other folks are doing versus what you guys are doing on the service side as well?
One thing that really helped me starting out solo is you really start looking at callbacks. why did this happen?
Oh yeah, because you're actually the one that has
Yeah.
to do it. And you're like, how
So-
do they screw this up?
So I'm stopping the truck here and making nothing. How can I cause this not to happen again tomorrow? So I looked at those things early on, and I know all the way until now that we provide the best service out there as far as what we do per stop. A lot of it is in this business is just response time. So we would never lock in our schedules till later in the afternoon for the next day. We'd have an idea, but we'd always make sure we were able to respond to a retreat or a new customer call or something like that, all the way almost up until closing before we would fill up the entire schedule. That way, that was the main thing. That's what really set us apart, is if call in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we've got someone ready to respond to those apps in the kitchen. At the time, now, a lot's changed in our market since just even a few years ago. A lot of the low quality providers are gone. Most of them are gone. They either sold or closed, just folded up. And a lot of the new guys coming up now are very high quality that I see. So it's just a totally different market now than what it was even 4 or 5 years ago.
What did you discover, like back in your early days when you were a solo operator? What did you discover were the main issues with when you had callbacks? Was there a specific type of recurring problem when you would get callbacks? Was it a lot of callbacks totally bogus, like the customer didn't understand what it is that I did, or how did that work in your mind?
In the early days, the callbacks were usually legitimate, and it was just me learning new methods of doing the same thing. Just being with the same company for 11 years, that's where I learned from. So just digging in and finding out what's out there, and there's a lot of resources available now. Again, starting in 2016, a lot's changed since 2016. These guys that are opening businesses now, I mean, there's so many resources out there. I mean, if you're willing to put in the work and go out there and find it. But yeah, the callbacks, the answer to every problem's out there. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
Of course, you're going to have some bogus ones, hey, I'm on vacation and I saw a wasp fly past the pool.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But we never responded to the customer that way. We acted like, oh no, we're going to come out there. Let's take a look. Because a lot of times I always felt, even though maybe we could explain that well over the phone, I wanted the technician to be face to face with them and say, hey, I'm going to treat around this area, and that'll stop them from building any nests. But in nature, sometimes stuff flies around. Yeah. I wanted to have that one-on-one talk instead of just someone at the office saying, no, that's not something that we cover.
Did you guys do one-time treatments? If somebody called and had a wasp issue and says, hey, I don't want to program.
We did provide one-times a lot in the early years. But as I started really looking at, one, if a problem bothered you in March, it's not going to not bother you in June or July. You're not going to be more likely to be okay with it. But two, those customers were typically not satisfied down the road. Like, hey, we had you guys come out a few months ago and they're back.
Yeah. We told you that.
So, we dropped the ball on explaining to them that. So part of the restructuring when we did the price changes is changing the price of the one time to make sure, one, we cover the additional cost of the next visit, because most of the time it's there. There's a current problem. We were moving away from one times, and I mean they were almost non-existent last year.
What sort of pricing did you move a one-time wasp treatment from to?
I think we had the same price whether you started new service, and we doubled the price of a one-time versus doing a regular service.
Yeah.
And that served the purpose. And I didn't want to totally exclude those, because a lot of times if we couldn't close that on the phone, the technician could when he got out there. And all of our technicians had the ability to sell and were commissioned, and they were able to get out there and and explain it like I would. Like, hey, these ants occur naturally. This product's going to help keep them back for a little while, but if you normally have ants, you're normally going to have ants.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was great. And I didn't want to take away that opportunity from the technicians. They were really good at closing one times. Very rare that we just did a solid one time the last few years.
Yeah. What do you think about companies that don't do one times at all?
I don't think they're missing opportunities.
You do?
Yeah. I mean, the main thing you've got to do is price it. Make sure, this customer, because most of the time you end up being out there twice on a one time. And a lot of it depends on having the right people on board. So our team, we were tight knit at the time of the sale. I had 4 technicians. We would meet and have breakfast meetings every Friday, and we were all on the same team. So with the commission structure I had in place, they wanted to be able to close that sale and gain that client too. And at the end of the day, we're helping people. So a lot of it is just informing them, educating them on pest activity and what we're able to do.
I noticed in Tennessee, there's been a significant proliferation of door-to-door businesses, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. And I would imagine, like, you guys are in Nashville Metro.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot. I know because I've sold a handful of them over there. What do you think about door-to-door businesses? Summer sales.
Oh, they have their place. I've never dove into it enough to see, how they operate. I do know occasionally we'll have a customer switch to door-to-door. It's not very long before they come back. A lot of times what I've noticed is maybe salesmen are making promises they can't keep. And that's probably normal in any industry. It hasn't really affected us that much. A lot of it, we were operating in our area on reputation, so it wasn't easy to knock on one of our doors. Just because they know our people. We communicate with our clients a lot, very visible in the community. So it just didn't really affect us a lot. We would get, the salesman, I'd have friends calling saying, yeah, he said he's already taken 4 or 5 Pest Solutions customers today. We haven't lost 4 or 5 customers this month.
Yeah, right.
That's not true. But
Had you ever thought about using door-to-door yourself?
Not at all.
You never even...
Not at all. I always wanted the company to be a reflection of me. You've been hanging out with me today. It's just not my personality.
No, it's definitely not your style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can see that. I mean, it's an interesting and effective way to grow a business, but it's also certainly not for everyone.
Yeah. And it depends on your time frame too. I had no real sense of urgency to wrap this up or to do it quickly. So I have lots of goals, and I've probably reserved a dozen business names with the state as I have ideas, just because that's the kind of guy I am. But never a real sense of urgency. I wanted to build a solid brand in our area. Those guys, most of the door-to-door customers, when we grab new customers from door-to-door companies, don't even know the name of it. So if you're going to be in it for the long term, you definitely want that presence. I don't pretend to be a professional in the whole industry, but just when you can be, and I'm thinking of other companies in the Nashville market who have done the same thing. When you make yourself visible out there, it's a lot stronger than just a high energy, well-spoken young salesman out there knocking on the doors.
So besides your trucks and your office, what other ways did you make yourself visible? Were you guys using like billboards, or did you go down any of those sorts of paths?
No, it was mostly for me. When we started growing, I started in a BNI group, got to know a lot of the real people moving business in our area. And that was the key, is just relationships. You make one solid relationship in a small community, and that leads to another and another, and now you're onboarding the mayor, and it snowballs. So it got to the point, or is to the point now, where, if someone asks on a local page on Facebook, I mean, dozens of people will mention our company, or maybe a technician by name and how great he is. And so once we had that in place, and it takes years to build that, but once we had that, we were able to kind of just ride the wave.
I've noticed a lot of companies join those BNI groups. How did you feel about that?
So it all depends on what your team is, what you're looking at. I've heard horror stories, and some of them being a waste of time. We had a solid group of people in ours that were really working to help each other, and that was really good for me. It's like having more salesmen out there.
You're going basically, is it like a weekly or a monthly or what?
It's weekly.
Okay.
And I ultimately exited BNI because of the commitment. Once we really started growing, I was just needed much more in the company. And the meeting is not the only thing you're going to do. You're going to meet with other members and learn more about their businesses. And you're always trying to help each other. So it's just keeping your eyes open. So, it was great for me to have someone hanging out at a cookout and saying, man, you got ants everywhere. My bug guy, will take care of that. And I would do the same for them. So yeah, if you're moving into an area and just trying to build a presence, it can be really beneficial. I didn't get into a lot of the other local organizations and stuff just because of time.
Yeah.
But it's a way to grow a business. Now, I'm seeing in pest control now, most of the time, it's just heavy marketing. And I'm sure that works a lot faster. But it's just not my style.
Yeah, like the BNI things you said they're weekly. Is it like a lunch or a dinner you get together?
Yeah, it depends on the chapter, but we would meet for breakfast. And it wasn't just wasting time and sharing stories and talking politics. We were all talking business and had our finger on what was going on in the community. So,
Awesome. Well, Brooks, I appreciate you sitting down with us today. I love your journey. I'm glad that you were able to get out.
Yeah.
I wish your team the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks.